Welcome to the Private Practice with Soul podcast. My name is Dr. Storme, and I help private practice owners align their business back with their soul's calling, with their big vision and with their soul's purpose. Unlike other private practice coaches, I've traveled the world in search of spiritual resources, spiritual tools, education and information so that you can have the transformation that your soul desires and needs so that you can up-level your business. How much fun is this? I love it so much. Guys, if you're not already a member of the Private Practice Monthly Mentorship Group, please check out the show notes. I would love for you to be there. In the meantime, thank you so much for pushing play today. Let's begin. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Private Practice with Soul podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Storme, and I want to say thank you very, very much for pushing play on another episode today. And welcome all the new subscribers. We're at 10,600 downloads now, which is really exciting for me. And if it sounds like I'm buzzing a little bit, it's because I might be. I have had a request in the Private Practice with Soul membership to talk about awakening the masculine energy and exploring ways that we can do that and link it all, of course, to our private practice. So another reason that I'm kind of buzzing a little bit is because I've been doing some training, and you know me, I love, I'm a course addict, aren't I? I'm doing a course at the moment about ceremony and ritual, and I'll be putting together a workshop to share with you the information that I've learned with that so that you can incorporate it into your practice as well. And it integrates the masculine and the feminine. So I'm loving doing that around seeing my coaching clients. But the other reason I'm kind of buzzing a little bit today is because my new Oracle cards have arrived. If you're not aware of this, I have currently 16 sets of mostly Oracle cards. I have a few sets of tarot. I'm drawn to different cards at different times. It's just like, you know, if they're calling me, I have to get them. And the ones that I've recently purchased are by a company called Threads of Fate, and I found them on Instagram actually, and the set that I got are called the Lumen Edition, and basically the background looks like clouds and, you know, galaxies and soft things like that, but they're pearlescent, and the picture on the card in the foreground is in gold foil. And the card that I'm working with today is the card of compassion. And I think it's worked out so well in terms of this podcast. And I'll tell you why. First of all, the card of compassion is a blue card, which we associate blue traditionally and archetypally with the male energy, that masculine energy. And the card itself I really like because, just looking at it now for you, it has, if you can imagine this, it kind of has, I think it's a ram's skull or a deer skull, and it's got the sort of stag horns going up, but it's all in gold foil, and coming off the horns, there's leaves and little pearls and little love hearts and droplets of things. And I guess, you know, the writing that goes along with this card really speaks about a really good point that I want to share with you today, because I think a lot of the time when we're talking about compassion, I don't know about you, but sometimes I used to think that I had to have compassion for people who I felt had wronged me. And sometimes that's a hard space to get yourself into, isn't it? Although with practice, we get much better at holding compassion for others. But what I really loved about the booklet that comes with the Lumen cards by Threads of Fate is this line, and it says, although this doesn't mean that you must have compassion for every person who has hurt you, because there are always going to be exceptions. It's always a choice that you must continue to make. You don't need to work on compassion and forgiveness before you've thoroughly processed the hurt, because it's imperative that you process the hurt. And I thought this was so beautiful. And I think that Compassion, while it looks very much like a masculine card on the surface, I think when you go a little bit deeper with it, you can see it's really speaking to both wounded masculine and wounded feminine energy, and gives some guidance around how you can shift or transmute that energy into something that's, more in the realms of the healthy space. The other reason that I'm in such a good mood at the moment is because some of my new oils have arrived. And listen, I don't know if you're into this or not. I'm learning about them now, but essential oils have a vibration. And of course it makes sense because everything has a vibration. And so I've been researching, masculine and feminine vibrational oils and things like that. And so this morning, it's this afternoon actually. It is Tuesday afternoon while I'm recording this for you. Oh, yum, this smells so good. I have been drawn to a bottle of frankincense. And I think frankincense is a little bit of an acquired scent, isn't it? But I can feel the masculinity in it. And so, yes, I felt called to anointing my wrists and collarbones and third eye with the frankincense before I jumped on this podcast with you today to try and embody as best as I could the masculine energy for this important podcast episode, which I will stop talking now and I'll get on with the show for you. So I guess, first of all, we really want to understand what do we mean when we're talking about masculine energy. And, the masculine energy is really around, as we've said before, logic, planning, reasoning, decision-making, strategy, process, all those sorts of things. So when you're seeking a supervisor for your private practice or you're seeking a coach for your private practice, if one of the things you're wanting support and guidance around is all of that kind of stuff, that's probably just giving us some insight that maybe you're in your masculine mind. And that's really helpful for us to be aware of, because then we can work out with you how to work with that energy. I think, though, just between you and I'd be interested to know your thoughts, but I think for the longest time, it seems to me that there's been kind of, in a way, a bit of an oppression of this male energy, almost political in a way that it's kind of not okay to be in that. We don't want to be seen as domineering. We don't want to be seen as arrogant. We don't want to be seen as controlling and all of those sorts of things. And I think there's been a real misconception in society around what the masculine energy is. Because it's not all bad. In fact, it's not bad at all. No energy is good or bad. Okay, we have sacred energy. It's all sacred, but it's either sort of in the healthy domain where it's working for us, or we all have shadow domains of this same energy. And you know what? Because it's in the shadow, you're not always going to be aware of it, and that's why it's so important for you to connect with a supervisor or a private practice coach that understands all of this, so that you can get the support that you need. But there are absolutely so many benefits to awakening that sacred masculine energy for us as women in private practice. And some of the benefits of awakening that energy include things like being more confident, having a better ability to follow through on your commitments, being able to have really strong boundaries, being balanced quite emotionally instead of being up and down. Being in the healthy masculine energy improves your ability to analyze situations. It helps you with your critical thinking. You tend to have a better self-control, better discipline. There's a sense of better mental ease and clarity, and it's much easier for you to remain objective because that emotional connection that we see with the feminine embodiment just isn't there to the same extent. So it's much easier to be in that space where you can look at things. You might see them as black and white and everything in the middle, but you're detached from them. And that's really, really helpful when it comes to business, because you need to have a business mind. You need to have a business head, and it's very, very hard if not impossible, to be successful in your private practice if you're solely and wholly in your feminine, because you won't get things done. You won't be in emotional balance. It's not to say women aren't emotionally balanced. We're just talking about the energy here of that feminine. You won't have willpower. You're not going to be committing to things. You may feel confident, but you're not going to be objective, and you're certainly not going to be in the headspace where you're able to think critically and really analyze things in the way that you need to. So if you are a woman in private practice who identifies perhaps in her mind body, so we have the energy body, the mind body, the heart body, and the spiritual body, but just thinking about your mind, if you feel like your mind is masculine, that's absolutely fine, and you'll have a really good chance of having a successful private practice because of some of those things that we've just said. However, if you find that you're mostly identifying with the feminine energy, then it's going to be really, really important for you to learn in a safe way how to start to awaken and embody that divine or sacred masculine energy. So here we're going to really begin with looking at any wounds or any hurt or any trauma that you might have surrounding that masculine energy. So thinking about, the relationships that you had with men growing up, maybe your father, maybe uncles, maybe brothers, allowing yourself space to reflect on those relationships and really ask yourself deeper questions like, how did you feel in those relationships? What were you craving in those relationships? What were you receiving? What didn't you receive? How did those male relationships influence your development as a woman? And how are any of those wounds that you might be carrying? Not everybody is. I'm just saying, this is something to think about. But if you do find that you have a wound around that sort of male energy, how's that showing up for you in your business? So I'll give you a quick example from mine. Like, as you know, my father left my mother with 6 children. I was the eldest and I had just turned 11 when he left. My littlest sister was 5. So I guess we grew up with my mum. We grew up in poverty. We grew up below the breadline, reliant on charities, reliant on handouts, things like that. It was very, very difficult though. I guess the messages I learned about money and how that relates to a father figure was I learned that my father didn't pay any maintenance. There wasn't sole parents' pension. The bank foreclosed on our home because my father didn't pay the mortgage. So I guess my feelings about my father with that archetype was that, if your own father's not going to provide for you, you need to provide for yourself. If your own father's going to disappear, then you can't trust people to stay. All of these sorts of things come up for me around the masculine energy. And then as an adult woman in my private practice, what happened was I started to make good money in my business, but because I grew up poor as a result of that dynamic with my father and my father and my family, I didn't know how to handle money. And I would often just, as soon as I got it into my bank account in private practice, I would just spend it. I wasn't paying myself a salary. I didn't put money aside for tax. I didn't pay myself super for the longest time. I didn't know how to manage money in a relationship. I had all of these ideas around what it meant to charge fees, and they were very conflicting ideas because part of me really had strong empathy for other families who'd grown up in poverty and needed help and couldn't afford it. So I had this social justice coming through as a result of that father archetype energy. And so part of me wanted to be the provider, that father energy for those people who couldn't afford it. And so for, I think it was, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. I think it was like 15 years I bulk billed. Like I didn't charge a cent to a client to see me. I didn't charge a single cancellation fee. My practice went through ups and downs financially as a result of that. It was a really big learning experience. Then I had to do a lot of work around the masculine energy when it came to doing things like finally settling on charging a fee, looking at what that would look like, and then supporting myself in creating the foundations of a strong private practice that was going to be profitable and support me in doing that, such as making sure I had all the policies and procedures in place. I had no idea what policies and procedures I needed. I was jumping in Facebook groups asking, and everybody had different opinions and no one really knew. It was very much a vague area. And so I had to figure out for myself, what did I need there? I had to figure out my marketing. I had to figure out all of the systems and processes for the practice in order for me to feel safe in that feminine energy, sitting with a client for an hour, doing that deeper work, building that relationship and cultivating all of that with them. But it was through examining those wounds around that very early primary, masculine archetype in my life that I was able to, in a very short space of time, give my business a facelift. I wanted to say makeover. I was able to give my business a makeover, and I just turned it around 180 degrees, and I've never looked back. So you would probably want to do similar work for yourself in terms of exploring those relationships, what you took away from them, any emotional blocks that you have around them, and what you need to process in order to heal. Okay. The next thing that might really work for you as well, and depending on where you're at in your own journey, we have this idea of that inner child. And I think this is so powerful to work with now that I understand it more deeply. But I think also I've spoken to you before about, some of the feminine archetypes like Isis, Mary Magdalene, Joan of Arc, Hathor, all of those women. We can use them to connect into that mother archetype energy within us and seek guidance. But did you know that you can also do the same with a father archetype energy? So, as you know, it was psychologist Carl Jung who coined the term archetype, and he created this whole concept, and it's an energy that you can tap into irrespective of if you identify as male or female or binary or anything like that. But you can absolutely connect in with that father archetype energy in a safe way through a practice like journaling. And the way that you would do that would be, settle your breath, calm yourself down, tune into your body, notice where you're feeling anything. Actually, it doesn't have to be tension or discomfort. It might be love, but just notice whatever's happening in your body. And then all you're going to do is just pick up your pen and just start writing. And you might even use some journal prompts to support you in connecting in with that father type energy, and allow yourself to use those prompts and just write and see what comes through. And don't be surprised if this is a very emotional activity, because it very well can be for women and men, but women are my clients, and that's who I'm speaking with at the moment. It can be very, very powerful and very, very impactful, because it also brings up, here we go again, my card of the day, which is compassion. It brings up compassion for our fathers. It brings up compassion for that masculine energy. It brings up compassion for ourselves, because we can see how we've been perhaps avoiding embodying that energy, or we haven't been embodying it for some reason. So there's that as well, which is huge. What else have I written down here? Yes. So one of the other advantages to awakening this spiritual masculine energy for you, and it connects to your private practice as well. I've got a few points down here. So the first one is it will allow you to tap into that space of protection. So when we think about traditional male role models, often what comes to mind is this idea of that masculine energy protecting the feminine, because it's the masculine that goes out and hunts and provides the food and does all of this, right back to those ancient times. that traditional energy has always kind of embodied that role of protecting the female. So when it comes to embodying protection in a really healthy way, think about what that's going to look like in your business, and think about whether or not you are protecting your business at the moment. So that can be very masculine type things, like, do you have a high enough level of insurance for your business? Do you have the right policies and procedures in place to protect yourself and your clients? Those kinds of things. So really think about how protection at the moment is or could be showing up in your business. Another area is to think about the masculine energy in terms of boundaries. So that masculine mind is really, really good at compartmentalizing and at being able to say, look, I'm just dealing with this now. It's one thing at a time, etc., etc. And one of the other things that this masculine energy does really, really well is it creates boundaries. It's very clear about those boundaries, not in a mean way or a horrible way or anything like that, but it's just a boundary. There's no emotional attachment to it. And so when you're reflecting on how you might embody masculine energy in your private practice, I would really love for you to think about, is there space for me to be more clear around my boundaries? And do I actually have boundaries? Why not? And when you think about why you don't, ask yourself, is this because I'm in my wounded masculine, or am I in my wounded feminine, and what needs to be healed here? The other thing that shows up in the masculine energy is those foundations. So check in with yourself and as a starting point, and because you will generally know if you have everything that you need ready to go in your private practice. This means automations of your systems. This means automations of your emails, of your newsletter, of your podcast, of all of that sort of stuff. It means having all of that good structure in place. And the way that you will know if you don't is you're getting anxious. I believe that one of the big reasons that women in private practice can experience anxiety is because they don't know what they're doing. And so this fear comes up to bite them. And we see this happen a lot in cases where perhaps you're working with a child and the mother's brought the child along, and now all of a sudden the biological father has just reappeared out of thin air and suddenly wants access to your notes and threatens to take you to court for copies of them and all of this sort of stuff. If you don't have processes and procedures in place around how you're going to manage that in your profession, that's going to make you really anxious. If you've got a parent or a partner of a client, or actually a client themselves, who continuously emails you, as I mentioned on a podcast episode last year, I was getting bombarded by emails from one particular client. I didn't know how to handle it at the time. And it was very, very stressful for me. But the reason it was stressful and anxiety inducing was because I didn't have a process around it. I didn't have a boundary around it. I didn't have that foundation there that I could lean on and go back to. So really take some time to be honest with yourself and support yourself in identifying, when I do get anxious in my practice, what are the things that are triggering that anxiety? And I will bet you it's because you don't have a masculine structure in place around something. And if that's the case, let me know, because we can absolutely sort it out for you. The other really powerful way that you can use the warrior archetype to activate some of this male energy is through grounding. You know, a warrior father archetype energy is very grounded. It's kind of the opposite in a way to that feminine energy, which tends to be a more whimsical. You know, there's more movement there, more flitting around, more fluttering around, more lightness. You know, it's like the leaf in the wind, just tumbling around, not knowing where she's going or what she's doing, but loving the journey. When we're thinking about the masculine, it's very grounding. It's like the roots of the tree, right? Going deep down into the earth. It's really, really grounding. So connecting in with that energy can support you in feeling grounded because you put all of these other things in place. So if you find that in your practice you're not feeling grounded And an example of this would be, let's say you come into work, and this is a common mistake that women in private practice make, but they'll look at their diary, but the diary only has appointments. It doesn't have in there anything else, like their admin time maybe, or their marketing time, or their supervision time. It's like an appointment. It's like a client's only diary. Things like that can be very destabilizing when all of a sudden you become aware of all of the other things that you're trying to squash into your day. And then you don't become grounded, you become flighty. And so it's really healthy for you to learn how to ground yourself, and you can do that through that masculine energy. And last but not at all least, is when you can tune into that energy of masculine archetype, you'll also find that it's easier for you to be assertive, which means that we're kind of back to that idea of boundaries and structure and protection. And you're not going to lose clients by being assertive. You're not going to upset anybody by being assertive, but you need to have those processes in place that are going to support you in letting people know that they've crossed a line and that they shouldn't or oughtn't, and that there would be a consequence and things like that. So there's so much value in tuning into this masculine energy. And I would go so far as to say, if you identify mostly in the masculine for your practice, you're probably better placed than someone who identifies as being mostly in her feminine to be successful in the business, for the very fact that in order for a feminine energy to thrive, it needs to have all these things in place. It needs to feel safe, i.e. protected. It needs to know there are the foundations there, i.e. the boundaries and the structure and things like that. It needs to know that the work's going to get done. That's being able to, follow through on obligations, see through commitments, things like that. Do you see what I mean? It's like that analogy of the masculine energy is invited to come and build the house. It's going to clear the land, put the flooring, put the walls in, the door, the windows, the roof, the heating, the air conditioning. It's going to do all of that sort of structural, procedural stuff, make the space safe so that that beautiful feminine energy can come in, can get into the kitchen, can cook, can listen to music, can invite friends over, can socialize, can have the love, the parties, the music, the dancing, all of this sort of stuff. She can't do that if the house is falling over, or if the house is in a state of disrepair, or if, well, you get the idea. Anyway, so there are things that you can do, but I think first of all, you probably really want to look at any wounds that you have in your masculine that need to be healed or loved, or you have some compassion for, and you need to be able to take aligned action with those. And finally, I think just raising your awareness around what energy you're in is going to be super helpful for you. I think, a lot of the time other private practice coaches are going to give you policies and procedures and things like that to support you in your private practice. But you and I both know you've got to have that integration of both energies if this is going to work for you. And I'm here to support you with that. And so I invite you to contact me by email, or if you want to have a conversation, I welcome you to do that as well. I am accepting people for group and individual supervision at the moment. So if you'd like some supervision around this and your private practice, let me know, because we can absolutely count that towards your registration hours. Or if you're wanting to be part of a community of women who are all doing this sort of work because you're feeling isolated and it would be great to connect with like-minded women, let me know, because I have a couple of groups, some free, some paid, that you might be interested in popping into and just having a look, check it out and see what it's like, and we can kind of go from there. So I hope this has been really, really helpful. I hope it's answered the question about how to embody the masculine energy. And if there's anything else that you need, just let me know. But other than that, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you so much. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Private Practice with Soul podcast today. If you're looking for clarity, if you need help with branding, your processes, and bringing everything into alignment with your soul's purpose for your private practice, head to the show notes and click the link for more information about the Private Practice Monthly Mentorship Group. You are going to love it. I can't wait to see you in there. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.